Hello, Trekkies! Thanks for joining me again on Best of Trek, Worst of Trek, the show where we rank every live-action episode in the Star Trek franchise. I'm your host, Dustin Wing. Finding out if pig and elephant DNA will splice at 108 and 109. End of a long road. Or Demons and Terra Prime. While not the final episodes, this two-parter is considered by many to be Enterprise's finale. The series wraps up with a milestone in galactic harmony as many of the races Johnny and crew have met through the run of the show come together on Earth for talks that will eventually lead to the founding of the Federation. Before that can happen, though, somehow a random woman bleeding to death gets into a high-profile diplomatic event and dies bearing a message for T'Pol and Trip. There's a baby out there somewhere, and it belongs to them. Despite T'Pol never having been pregnant, and a one-night fling was all they ever shared. Despite previous bad blood in the season, Archer had Reed talk to his old Section 31 leader Harris about what's really going on here. And it's just the beginning of unwrapping this classic Bond villain plot. Turns out a classic Nazi-esque xenophobe created a Vulcan-human hybrid baby just so he could hold it up as an abomination. No matter what, he's going to take his moon mining base to Mars to tap into some Starfleet tech that gives him a ray gun that can reach anything in the solar system. And he'll use it if all non-humans don't leave the Sol system soon. We get a nice tie back to the TOS episode Savage Curtain, as he talks about Colonel Green, who wiped out radiation victims after Earth's Third World War, in an effort to cleanse the human race. Mayweather gets duped by his ex-girlfriend posing as a reporter, also working for the Terra Prime group, and using him to spy on Starfleet, or so it would appear. Loose lips sink ships, dude. As we come to the end of the second episode, Hoshi's left in command to make some big decisions. And this truly brings her character arc full circle from the frightened officer that wanted nothing but to go home by the third episode of the series, to competent bridge officer ready to do what needs to be done, no matter the consequences. There is a scene after the bulk of the action is over of another Terra Prime operative that's supposed to kill Archer, but ends up taking his own life instead. I'm really not sure what that added to the episode other than runtime, but that's a thing. And it wasn't Travis's girl who was the operative. She was working for Starfleet all along. Despite the loss of the baby they never had a hand in creating, T'Pol and Trip's grief really hits you after these action-packed episodes. And you're left on the positive note that if not cloned, a human Vulcan child might be possible in the future, setting up the groundwork for Spock. As long as you ignore These Are the Voyages, this two-parter makes a fitting end to Enterprise's not quite 5-year mission. Throwing the Prime Directive out with the bathwater at 106 and 107. Call Me Ishmael. Or Equinox Parts 1 and 2. Nearly every captain gets a moment where they go on an irrational quest for a white whale. Janeway's comes in the form of the only other known Federation captain in the Delta Q. After it's revealed he and his crew were using beings from a layer of subspace as fuel, only to have them fight back hard against the Equinox. This episode is a long line from the first in Kathy's dedication to her own personal version of the Prime Directive, though she goes so far as to take an Equinox crewman to the edge with one of the entities in an effort to get information, which Chakotay has to pull her back from. One of Torres's Academy buddies on the Equinox, Max, shows himself to be more dedicated to the whole using living beings as a source of fuel thing than Ransom. But in the end, they both get what's coming to them. Voyager gains a few crew members, Chakotay continues his role as the ship's unofficial counselor, and in a rare moment, is the shining beacon of morality over Janeway. This episode was nominated for an Emmy in sound editing, and that's well deserved. Many of the darker elements feel dialed up to 11, because of the background score and music cues. Great performances the whole way around in this chase of a white whale. Pulling on the fabric of time at 105, piling on. Or, future tense. Enterprise finds a strange craft with an unknown human aboard. At first they think they found Zephram Cochrane, but this is not the Enterprise that will make that discovery. Instead, what they've found is another piece of the ongoing temporal Cold War that's bigger on the inside than out. Being the first of many callers, a single Suliban ship claims to have rights to the craft, and Archer kinda laughs this single ship off. It's not till later in the episode, where they're being chased by a pack of Suliban, and the little seen Tholians are also trying to get the time ship, that Johnny realizes they have a problem. And to compound it, the ship is giving off some type of temporal radiation that causes the last few minutes in the launch bay to keep repeating in a circle. Up to this point, there's been something of a trope of Enterprise heading full steam for the nearest Vulcan ship for assistance with whatever hornet's nest they've disturbed in humans' early exploration of the galaxy this week. I kinda love that when they get to the Vulcans this time, the Tholians have gotten there first, and ironically leave only the Suliban between Enterprise and the deadly Tholian web. Thankfully, Florida Man does what he does best and gets a time transponder working, so all of the future tech stuff gets returned. The stakes just keep getting more and more serious through the episode, and it really pays off in this one. Talking another AI to death at 104, absurdity at its best. Or, I'm Mud. So what makes this different from this? The answer is comedic timing. As long as you can look past the trafficking incident with Harry Mudd, this episode sees him in the role of a planetary ruler, with the caveat that he can't leave. Held hostage by a race of ancient androids that have long outlived their creators, and looking for meaning, they hijack the Enterprise and force the command crew to spend the rest of their lives being studied and immortalized, hanging out with their friend Harry Mudd. The first 2/3 of the episode are just what I've laid out, and is merely a standard TOS formula, even ending with the umpteenth time William Shatner talks an AI to death. But that's where this episode adds an extra to its ordinary. William Shatner does his ultimate bit of William Shatnering, along with the main cast plus Mudd. They do the most perplexing things, while feeding the androids double negatives, and the timing of each event is choreographed so well, I will take this over this every single time. Nonchalantly crossing over at 102 and 103, forgivingly unattached. Or, in a Mirror Darkly, parts 1 and 2. Yes, in the mirror universe, my mother was an Orion snakeleaf dealer. Now that we got that out of the way, this episode is the only mirror universe which, for me, is just the regular verse. That doesn't directly involve a main character crossing from one universe to another, but takes off the thread from TOS's Tholian web of the disappearance of the USS Defiant. No, not that one. We're dropped straight into our main cast, including a still-alive-for-now Forrest as captain. But so as it is in the Terran Empire, his first officer, Archer, has higher ambitions of command. After running a coup, liberating the Defiant, and getting Enterprise and Forrest destroyed, he thinks he's up top dog. One of the best scenes is just him in the second episode showing off himself in a TOS-style uniform. After overtaking the crew of another Terran ship, they use the Defiant as a Trojan horse to secure Emperorship for Archer. But after all his hard work, it was Hoshi as the captain's woman, who was always one step ahead. And we're left with the idea that she's probably about to become the next Emperor at the end. I really dig that they leave the story open-ended. This episode is pure fun. Even the CGI Gorn fight scene and Enterprise's only voice contribution by Majel Barrett. Thanks, Majel. See you on the other side of the mirror, suckers! Rounding out the 3-digit ranks at 100 and 101. Enemy of my frenemy. Or Redemption Parts 1 and 2, the episodes where we get the reveal of not Tasha Yar and Klingon boobs. I mean, Scylla and the Duras sisters getting into bed together. I mean, that sounds like an idea for some fan fiction. What I'm trying to say is the Romulans start supplying the Duras family and those loyal to them in a coup as Galron is ascending to be leader of the High Council. Because we're at Kronos, Worf can't help but get involved and takes a little break from Starfleet to try and regain his family honor by declaring for Gowron. The Federation can't get involved in the war, but after the clues start being put together, Starfleet does agree to run a blockade between the Romulan and Klingon empires, which draws out of the shadows the previously hinted at daughter of Tasha Yar, which comes to tell Picard to move on. Guinan's spidey time sense helps bring some clarity to this follow-up to yesterday's Enterprise. This two-parter really brings a ton of past plot points together in one of the rare moments in TNG that takes off of previous threads. In the end, Data has one of his best moments across the franchise as he gets his first temporary command with a cyberphobic first officer and correctly exposes the Romulan connection. He almost gets emotional when he has to repeat his command to fire to his insubordinate number one. This episode ties the three classic Alpha and Beta Quadrant powers together well in an interesting war story that will have wider implications in the future.
Ah, computer!
That program is available.
Thanks, Major. Thanks, Major.
Last time on Star Trek Voyager.
Thanks, Major.
Working.
Major.
Program complete.
Thanks, Major.
AMH authorization is required.
Thanks, Major.
Captain Ransom is in crew quarters, Deck 9, Section 22.
Thanks, Major.
Level 9 authorization required.
Major.
And now, the conclusion.
Thanks, Major.